I was in the middle of the most important surgery of my career when the power completely failed. Total darkness, absolute silence. And there, with the patient open on the table, I felt something I had never experienced before. A soft light began to emanate from a small medal I had carried in my pocket for years, never having paid any attention to it. That light wasn't natural, it wasn't from this world. And it was that light that allowed me to complete the operation that saved a life and forever changed my understanding of what truly matters in existence. My name is Charles. I'm 52 years old, and for over 2 decades, I was one of the most respected cardiovascular surgeons at St. Luke's Hospital in New York City. My life was always governed by precision, science, the cold logic of medical procedures. I didn't believe in miracles, divine signs, or anything that couldn't be explained by medical textbooks. I was a man of faith, yes, but a cerebral faith, almost academic. God existed, of course, but he operated through the hands of doctors, through technology, through human knowledge. I grew up in a simple family in rural Alabama. My father, John, was a mechanic at a small shop in the town of Sweetwater. My mother, Mary, sewed for extra income and took care of us 3 children with the devotion of a saint. They didn't have much money, but they had enormous dreams for their children. I was the eldest, and from a young age, I showed a knack for academics. I remember the nights my mother stayed up late helping me with my homework, while my father worked late hours to pay for my notebooks and books. It was my mother who gave me the medal. I was 17 and about to leave home to study medicine in the city. It was a small silver medal with the image of the Blessed Virgin Mary. "Always keep this with you, my son," she said, her eyes shining with tears. "You may not understand now, but one day you'll need it." I smiled, kissed her forehead, and put the medal in my pocket. Not out of faith, but out of love for the woman who had sacrificed so much for me. Throughout my years of college, residency, and specialization, the medal stayed with me. Sometimes I completely forgot about it. Sometimes I felt it in my pocket during a difficult procedure. But I never gave it any real importance. It was just a sentimental reminder of my mother, a small talisman that connected me to my humble origins. My career took off quickly. At 30, I was already recognized as one of the best surgeons of my generation. At 35, I had my own practice and operated in the best hospitals in the city. By 40, I had saved hundreds of lives. But professional success didn't fill the void that was beginning to grow inside me. My marriage to Jennifer, which lasted 12 years, ended in divorce. She said I loved the hospital more than our family. Maybe she was right. I spent 15, 16 hours a day immersed in work, always striving for perfection, always wanting to save one more life, always chasing an excellence that always seemed to be one step ahead. My children, William and Anna, aged 14 and 12, only saw me on weekends. And even then, I took work home, answered emails, and answered emergency calls from the hospital. I had become a stranger in my own family. Medicine had become my religion, my obsession, my only reason for existence. And the more I immersed myself in it, the more I distanced myself from the people I loved. It was during this period that I began to question everything. Not medicine, never that, but the meaning of my existence. I saved lives, yes, but I was losing my own life in the process. I woke up at 5 in the morning, got home at 10 at night, slept 5 hours, and started all over again. Weekends at the hospital, holidays on call, Christmas operating, New Year's in the ICU. My life had become a mechanical routine, without color, without flavor, without a real purpose beyond the next surgery. And then came October 15th, 2023. It was a Thursday. I remember every detail of that day because it was when everything changed. I had just finished lunch when I received an urgent call from the hospital. An 8-year-old child, victim of a car accident, needed emergency cardiovascular surgery. The girl's heart had been punctured by a fractured rib, and she was losing a lot of blood. There was no time to transfer her to another hospital. I was her only option. I rushed to the hospital. The girl's name was Isabella. She had brown curly hair and large, frightened eyes. Her parents, a young couple, were desperate in the hallway. The father, a simple, hard-working man, grabbed my arm tightly. "Doctor, please save my daughter. She's all I have." The mother just cried, holding a small doll that belonged to the girl. I reassured the parents, as I always did. "We'll take good care of her. She's in the best hands." Words I had said hundreds of times, but that day they sounded different in my mouth. There was something special about that child, something I couldn't explain. Maybe it was the way she looked at me when she entered the operating room, without fear, with a confidence that seemed to come from another world. The surgery began at 2:30 p.m. It was a complex operation, but I had performed similar operations dozens of times. My team was experienced, the hospital had the best equipment, everything was running smoothly. I had identified the puncture point, controlled the bleeding, and was beginning to suture the girl's heart when it happened. At 3:47 p.m., all the lights went out. This wasn't just a power outage, it was total, absolute darkness. The backup generator, which should have kicked in automatically, also failed. The operating room was plunged into complete blackness. I couldn't see my own hands. The little girl's heart was open, exposed, and I'd completely lost sight of the surgical field. "Someone get a flashlight, quickly!" I yelled, but nothing. The team was as lost as I was. I heard footsteps running down the hallway, nervous voices, the sound of equipment being switched on and off. But in that room, we were completely in the dark. And worse, I could feel by touch that the girl was losing blood again. Every second could be fatal. Then it happened. I felt a gentle warmth in my pants pocket. It wasn't physical heat, but something different, something that seemed to come from within. Instinctively, I reached into my pocket and touched my mother's medal. And the moment my fingers touched the metal, a soft light began to emanate from it. A golden, warm light, slowly growing and gradually illuminating the surgical field. "Doctor, what is that?" asked Nurse Anna, who was beside me. Her voice trembled with disbelief. I didn't know what to say. There was no logical explanation for what was happening. The light was coming from the metal, that was undeniable, but it wasn't electric light. It was something organic, alive, pulsing gently like a heart. "Continue the surgery," I said, trying to remain calm. But inside, I was completely distraught. My rational mind refused to accept what was happening, but my heart knew that this light was a gift, a grace, a miracle that would allow me to save the child's life. And if you're following this testimony and want to continue hearing stories like this about moments when the inexplicable touches our lives, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There's much more to share about how the sacred manifests in our daily lives. The light from the metal wasn't as strong as a surgical lamp, but it was perfectly sufficient for me to see what I was doing. And more than that, it seemed to guide me. Every movement of my hands was more precise than ever before. Every stitch I made was exact. It was as if I wasn't operating alone, as if there were other hands on mine, guiding me with a wisdom that went far beyond my medical training. The surgery lasted another 40 minutes in the dark. 40 minutes in which that soft light was my only company. I managed to completely repair the girl's heart, stop the bleeding, and close the incision with a perfection I didn't understand myself. During all this time, the team remained in absolute silence. It wasn't a tense silence, but a reverent silence, as if we were all witnessing something sacred. When I finally finished the last stitches, the light from the metal began to gradually diminish. A few minutes later, the electricity came back on, and the operating room was flooded with the artificial light of the spotlights. But at that moment, that light seemed cold and lifeless compared to the one that had guided me during the operation. I took the metal out of my pocket and looked at it for a long time. It was the same metal my mother had given me 35 years earlier. Small, simple, nothing special. But I knew it had been the instrument of something much greater, something that would forever change my understanding of life, of faith, of my purpose in this world. Isabella made a full recovery. Her recovery was so rapid that the ICU doctors were surprised. In 3 days, she was already playing in her hospital bed. In a week, she was discharged. Her parents cried with gratitude when they came to thank me. "Doctor, you're an angel," the mother said. "No," I replied, "the angels were with us that day, but it wasn't me." In the following weeks, I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. I looked for rational explanations. Maybe it had been a reflection of light from some equipment. Maybe my mind, under extreme pressure, had created an illusion. Maybe I had imagined everything. But deep down in my heart, I knew none of that was true. I had witnessed a miracle, a real, tangible miracle that had saved a child's life. This experience forced me to rethink everything. I started reading about spirituality, about faith, about the mysteries that science still can't explain. I started attending church again, something I hadn't done in years. But more importantly, I started to really pray. Not memorized prayers, but sincere conversations with God, asking to understand what He wanted from me. The answer came gradually. I began to realize that my obsession with medicine had distanced me from what really mattered. I had become an excellent technician, but I had lost compassion, humanity, the ability to see beyond the disease and see the person who was suffering. The medal had shown me that I needed to be more than a surgeon. I needed to be a healer in the broadest sense of the word. So I started making changes in my life. I reduced my workload and started dedicating more time to my children. William and Anna, who had grown up with an absent father, began to know a different man. We started traveling together, talking about their dreams, playing soccer in the backyard. I had lost many years of their childhood, but there was still time to build a real relationship. I also started volunteering at a needy community on the outskirts of New York City. Every Thursday, I went there to offer free medical consultations. They weren't complex surgeries, but simple treatments: hypertension, diabetes, minor injuries. But in these consultations, I discovered something I had lost in private practice: the genuine gratitude of people. There, I wasn't just a famous doctor. I was someone who cared about them. And it was precisely in this community that I understood the true meaning of the miracle I had witnessed. I met Mrs. Mary, a 78-year-old woman who cared for 7 orphaned grandchildren in a 2-room house. She had advanced diabetes, high blood pressure, and should have been despaired with so many problems. But she radiated a peace I had never seen before. "Doctor," she told me one day, "I have almost nothing, but I have everything because I have faith, and faith is what makes the difference." At that moment, looking at that simple woman, I understood that the miracle of the medal hadn't just been about saving Isabella's life. It had been about saving my own life. I was dying inside, suffocated by my own ambition, by my obsession with success. The light that had emanated from the medal wasn't just a physical light. It was a spiritual light, a call for me to rediscover my true purpose. I started carrying the medal with me always, but now with a different understanding. It wasn't a lucky charm or a magic object. It was a symbol of my mother's faith, a constant reminder that there are forces in the universe that go beyond our understanding, but that act through love, compassion, and dedication to others. My relationship with medicine also changed. I continued to be an excellent surgeon, but I began to see each patient as a whole person, not just as a clinical case. I started talking more with them before surgeries, getting to know their stories, their fears, their hopes, and I discovered that this human connection made all the difference in the healing process. There were other moments over the following months when I felt the presence of something sacred during surgeries.
Not the light of the metal again, but an inner peace, a confidence that went beyond my technical competence. As if I no longer operated alone, as if there was a higher guidance guiding my hands. And the results spoke for themselves. My success rate in surgeries increased considerably. But the most important thing wasn't the professional results. It was the inner transformation that was happening to me. I had rediscovered the ability to be moved, to connect with people, to find meaning in the little things in life. A smile from a recovering patient, a word of affection from my children, a sunset that I finally had time to contemplate. About a year after the miracle, I received a call that would further change my perspective on everything. It was Isabella's mother, the girl I had operated on that day. "Dr. Charles," she said, "I wanted you to know something."
On the day of Isabella's surgery, we were praying in the hospital chapel, and during the surgery, I felt an inexplicable peace, as if the Blessed Virgin Mary was telling me that everything would be all right. When the power went out, I wasn't desperate. I knew my daughter was protected. Hearing this, I felt a shiver run down my spine. It wasn't just me who had experienced something supernatural that day. The girl's mother had also felt the divine presence. This made me understand that miracles don't just happen to one person. They are collective experiences, moments when the sacred touches the lives of several people at the same time, creating a network of faith and love that goes far beyond what we can see or understand. Today, 2 years after that day, I am a completely different man. I haven't abandoned medicine. On the contrary, I'm a better doctor than ever. But now I understand that being a doctor is not just about applying techniques and scientific knowledge. It's about being an instrument of healing, a channel through which divine compassion can flow to touch people's lives. I continue to carry the medal of the Blessed Virgin Mary in my pocket, not because I believe it has magical powers, but because it reminds me daily that there are mysteries in this world that go beyond our understanding. It reminds me of my mother's simple faith, who knew that one day I would need that memory. It reminds me that, even in the darkest moments, there is always a light available to guide us. My relationship with my children has strengthened immensely. William, who is now 16, recently told me, "Dad, I don't know what happened to you, but you're much more present, much more affectionate. Thank you for coming back to us." Anna, at 14, started seeking me out to talk about her dreams, her fears, her discoveries. I recovered not only my humanity, but my fatherhood. And the work in the needy community has expanded. Today, I coordinate a team of volunteer doctors who serve more than 200 families a month. It's not just welfare work, it's a mission. It's a way of returning to the world all the grace I received on the day the medal shone in the dark. Sometimes people ask me if I really believe there was a miracle that day, if I really believe that the medal emitted a supernatural light. And I always answer, it doesn't matter if you believe it or not. What matters is that that experience transformed my life, reconnected me with my purpose, taught me to value what really matters. Because ultimately, we all carry some kind of medal in our pocket. It might be a childhood memento, a lesson from our parents, a deeply impactful experience. And sometimes, in the most difficult moments of our lives, when everything seems lost, these medals begin to shine, not necessarily with a physical light, but with a spiritual light that guides us back to the right path. My story isn't just about a medical miracle. It's about rediscovering faith, family, and compassion. It's about understanding that professional success is worthless if we have no one to share it with. It's about realizing we are merely instruments in the hands of something far greater than ourselves. And if there's one thing I'd like you to take away from this story, it's this. Pay attention to the signs. Look with love at the small things you carry with you. Cherish the people you love. Don't wait for a power outage to discover there's a special light within you, waiting to be ignited.
The Blessed Virgin Mary medal remains with me, small and unassuming in my pocket. But now I know it's not just a piece of metal. It's a symbol that my mother's love, my family's faith, and divine grace are always present, even when we can't see them, especially when we can't see them. And that's the message I leave you. Within each of us is a medal waiting to shine. Sometimes we need a moment of complete darkness to perceive the light that has always been there, illuminating our path, guiding our hands, protecting our steps. May you have the courage to seek that light, and may it lead you, as it led me, back to what truly matters in life, to love and serve others with a heart full of gratitude and faith.